Welcome back to Bettrmma, the best ASMR on MMA YouTube. UFC 300 just wrapped up. This is 5 things we learned from UFC 300. I want to jump right into it with the main event. I want to speak about how truly unique and special it is that we're watching Alex Pereira do what he's doing in the UFC right now. If anything has been made clear from Alex Pereira's reign and run throughout the UFC, and you could also say the very same for Israel Adesanya's career in the UFC, is that the highest level kickboxers that are successful right now outside of the UFC, if they are able to implement enough sound takedown defense, they will run through the UFC when it comes to the striking. Organizations such as One Championship, who not only is arguably the second leading MMA promotion worldwide behind the UFC, but they have the largest roster and most talented roster of kickboxers in the world. For the lower weight divisions, of course, when it comes to the heavier weight division, Glory Kickboxing has a very dominant reign there. The point that I want to make here is that if you guys are not watching One Championship Muay Thai, Lumpini Stadium Championship Muay Thai, you guys are missing out on watching the greatest strikers in the world. I want to bring up some names like Tawanchai PK Sanchai Muay Thai Gym, also known as Tawanchai. I want to bring up guys like Superbon. If you are unfamiliar with these kickboxers, I highly recommend that you look them up, because if these kids only knew takedown defense, they would be knocking out all of our UFC champions. And that's a real reality. And for those of you guys who love combat sports, just take my advice on this one. Start watching Muay Thai, start watching the top kickboxers around the world, and you'll see how high level they are, and you'll soon come to realize that the best strikers in the world, for the most part, are outside of the UFC. I had some very big high hopes for Jamal Hill in this fight, that he was going to be able to back up his barking and actually give Alex Pereira a competitive fight here. But what we've learned from UFC 300 is that Alex Pereira, he's the greatest striker at 205 pounds we've ever seen. John Jones, who lost to Dominic Reyes, we all know if John Jones got into the cage with Alex Pereira, he would be shooting for takedowns immediately. Alex Pereira is the most dangerous striker, I think, outside of Anthony Rumble Johnson, we've ever seen in terms of nuclear knockout power. And he has this insanely large kickboxing frame, which allows him to control the distance in his fights, fight at distance and at kicking range, and at the same time throw heavy shots in the pocket and be able to evade counter shots with good head movement. It's getting to a point now where we're going to have to start ranking Alex Pereira amongst the greatest light heavyweight champions of all time. And I've been joking around with a buddy of mine that, a prime Randy Couture could very likely beat Alex Pereira, but that all being said, outside of the stylistic mismatch, where does he rank amongst other light heavyweight champions? How would we imagine Alex Pereira in a fight against Chuck Liddell or Rampage Jackson? But what we've learned is that Alex Pereira is a true legend of the sport. The next thing we learned is that Max Holloway is truly one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters the UFC has ever seen. After that performance against Justin Gaethje, the way he made Justin Gaethje look like just another contender, he's blowing our minds and redefining for us what a dominant performance in the UFC can look like. We were blown away by his Brian Ortega performance. We couldn't even believe that it got topped by his Calvin Kattar performance. And now you throw into his knockout win over the Korean Zombie, and now a knockout win after a dominant fight over Justin Gaethje. Max Holloway is making himself a resume for one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters of all time. After this dominant performance, no matter how things go at featherweight, whether he fights Ilya or not, this gives Max Holloway an opportunity to get a rematch with Dustin Poirier after Dustin Poirier inevitably loses to Islam Makhachev. The possibilities are really endless for Max Holloway right now. I don't think that a title shot at 155 really suits his career. At the end of the day, a title shot is a title shot, and I'm sure Max Holloway will take it. My only concern is the fact that we've never seen Max Holloway up against any real dominant grappling-based fighters, and when he has lost in his career earlier on against Dustin Poirier in their first fight, it was from being dominated on the ground by his larger opponent, and I'm just concerned that these guys like Arman Tsarukyan or Islam Makhachev, whoever may be holding the belt at the time, can easily take down and control Max Holloway on the ground at 155. That's my only concern for Holloway. In my prediction video, I spoke about how Max Holloway changes levels, uses feints, works inside and out of range very well, but I was really blown away how well he did it in this fight with Justin Gaethje. This was the typical bull versus matador type of fight, and I don't think we've ever seen a better execution of this sort of matchup than what we saw tonight with Max Holloway. All credit to Justin Gaethje for being a warrior, but he got absolutely worked for 25 minutes by Max Holloway. As I mentioned in my Ilya Topuria video, I really hope that Max Holloway decides to go down to 145 to face Ilya Topuria. Now, the third thing that we've learned from UFC 300, Arman Tsarukyan is that guy, Lucas Tracy. These are the things that actually make me question whether Lucas Tracy is a plant by the UFC somehow, because it doesn't make sense how he is literally the Charlie Brown of MMA YouTube, and it's guaranteed whenever he makes a strong point about a big fight that he's cursed it and he's gonna get it wrong. As soon as I saw him make that video about Arman Tsarukyan saying, Arman Tsarukyan ain't that guy, that is literally what sparked my initiative to dig deeper into the logic of Arman Tsarukyan being able to win that fight. I was initially going to be emotional and pick Charles Oliveira in this matchup, the same way I picked Cody Garbrandt, because I was being emotional and I wanted him to win. But once Lucas Tracy put on his stupid, dummy-dumb grin and said, Arman Tsarukyan just ain't that guy, and mumbled and bumbled and waffled about nothing, trying to water down and discredit Arman Tsarukyan's skill level, now what do you have to say, buddy? He just beat Charles Oliveira by a 3-round decision, split decision, sure, but what did he do? He took everything Charles Oliveira threw at him. What more do you want Charles Oliveira to do? He got him in a guillotine in the first minute, completely dry. What better circumstances do you want to give Charles Oliveira to win that fight? Arman Tsarukyan proved that he is championship level at an extremely young age. Now, I don't think he's going to be able to beat Islam Makhachev, but I see him and Islam Makhachev having a rivalry at the top of this lightweight division for the next few years or so. These guys like Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, as much as they are the fan favorites, they're fan favorites because they gave us their best 5 years ago. The game has moved on and the division has moved on without them. Now the lightweight division is dominated by the strongest grapplers, whether you're talking Islam Makhachev, Arman Tsarukyan, Charles Oliveira, Mateusz Gamrot. Honorable mentions before I wrap this video up. What did we learn about Yuri Prochazka in this fight? Me personally, I didn't learn anything new. I expected that exact type of performance out of Yuri Prochazka. Go out there, get himself cut, get some bruises, hurt his leg up nice, get a nice little injury for the road, and then he eventually got an amazing highlight reel knockout, as the wild man does, because he plays that high stakes game. You do not want to roll dice with Yuri Prochazka. Alexander Rakic stood on the feet with Yuri for far too long. If he wanted to get that decision win, he should have been real about it and took Yuri to the ground, because you can't control this man when you let him move around on his own. Absolutely stunning performance by Prochazka. I never doubted him for a second in this fight. I didn't do any research on Alexander Rakic going into this fight because I knew what he already brought to the table, and I knew the style that Yuri brought to the table. With these two styles, both in their athletic prime, and Yuri Prochazka is healthy, there's no reason why he shouldn't finish Alexander Rakic's cookie cutter style every single time. And the last thing that I want to talk about before we wrap this video up is what we learned about Bo Nickal. Look, everybody's hating on Bo Nickal. Okay, you guys be a highlight reel finisher on the pay-per-view of UFC 300 when you're not even 10 professional fights into your UFC career. Like, guys, he's human. Bo Nickal showed a great display of individual skills, whether it was on the feet, in the wrestling, in his ground and pound, or in his submissions. The major problem in his game is just from transitioning from one martial art to the other seamlessly throughout the fight. Too often he gave Cody Brundage these moments to breathe and think about what he needed to do to defend. And as Bo Nickal gets more intense in training, watches the film from this fight, and works on finishing sequences that he can execute on in the future, I think we're only going to see a more dangerous Bo Nickal. And if anything, this is the most healthy outcome we could get from Bo Nickal in this fight, because it's not like he'd suffered an upset loss and now he's going to have to go back to the drawing table. But Bo Nickal suffered a healthy amount of disappointment simply by not having the highlight reel performance that we all expected him to have. Now, he still got a finish in the UFC without having to go into the third round. If you ask 99% of fighters, they're not going to be complaining about that whatsoever. So the fact that we're seeing Bo Nickal really split hairs here, it only speaks to his competitive nature. And I would recommend Bo Nickal to go train at a larger gym or start doing a little bit of training at a larger gym, something like Kill Cliff, American Top Team, perhaps American Kickboxing Academy. I think it would do Bo Nickal some real good to work alongside not just the wrestlers in the Penn State wrestling room, but some really seasoned veteran fighters that have some MMA tricks up their sleeve that they can teach Bo Nickal. Those are 5 things that we've learned from UFC 300. UFC 300 was an absolutely amazing card. Thank you guys for watching Bettrmma, the best ASMR on MMA YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.